how you do it.
Tonight we're going to discuss the laws of halachic hours, halachic times, right? Because we talked about it this evening. So we have to understand one basic principle, right? Which is the writing principle over this. That what? That we have, we have our clocks, we have digital clocks, we have hand clocks, all kinds of stuff. The chimes, we have all these things, right? They all work on a system which is what? 12 hours at night, 12 hours in the daytime, 24 hours in the day. They're divided into equal units. Each one is 60 minutes. Right? So altogether, we have 24 hours in one day. Okay, very good. But this is just practical hours that were made by human beings. But according to halacha, according to Jewish law, it's not like that, right? What does that mean? That the hours are determined by the size of the day and the size of the night. That's the way it works, right? So what does that mean? That as the day, as you know, right, in the winter the day gets shorter, the night gets longer. In the summer, the other way around, right? That's the way it is. The night is short, the day is long. So what happens is that because of that, the hours also get shorter and longer. Why is that? Because the way you calculate an hour in halacha, in Jewish law, halachic hour, that's what we call it, right? Whatever. You know? What does that mean? That means that you take the whole daytime or the whole nighttime, the whole night period, right? As we said, it can be short and long according to the season. You divide that into 12 units, equidistant units, equal units, and those units are called 1 hour. So what does that mean? Practically speaking, right? Whether you're living, let's say, in America or in Israel or whatever it is, right? A little bit different because of the horizon. The horizon is different. But the point is, bottom line is that in the winter, the hours get shorter. So what does that mean? In the winter altogether, right? If you take the whole daytime, how much daytime do you have in the winter? Like let's say in America, right? We're talking about the shortest time, right? Can be from about 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 at night, something like that, whatever. So we're talking about instead of having 12 hours, you have really 9 hours. You know what I mean? That's what you have. So that what does that mean? That each hour now is much shorter than it usually is. What does that mean? The average hour is 60 minutes, right? So what is it going to be now? It's going to be 45,
Right.
right? 45 minutes, right? You just looked at the clock today, right? At the calendar today, and what it turned out to be, it was 51. Why is that? Because now it's going towards the spring already. We're going right up now. We're going uphill, right? Towards the spring, towards the summer. So therefore, the momentum is already going up now. The days are getting longer, right? So what does that mean? In the dead of the winter in America, the sun goes down, let's say about 4:30, right? In New York City, New York, New Jersey area,
Right.
whatever, right? Sun goes down at 4 o'clock, 4:30, I'm sorry, and it comes up around 7:15, 7:30, whatever it is, right? That's when the sun comes up. So what does that mean? That we have only 9 hours of the day, as we said, right? And each hour you have to subtract for each hour that we lose. What does that mean? Usually we have 12, right, in the daytime, on the average. Now each hour that you take off, you're taking off 5 minutes from the hour, because altogether, right, what happens is like this: that when you divide up 1 hour into 12 units, right? How much is that? 60 divided by 12 is 5,
Right.
right? So that means that each hour that you're losing, you have to subtract 5 minutes from the halachic hour. That's the way it works. You understand? So what does that mean? That if the halachic hour, if the day is now right 9 hours, that means we have to subtract 15 minutes from the hour. Each hour for 5 minutes off.
Right.
So it comes out to be 45 minutes. If it's 10-hour day, it'll come out to be 15 minutes. That's what we have right now, right? More or less, right? That's the idea. 15 minutes because we have now a 10-hour day.
Okay.
What does that mean? The sun comes up at 7:05, let's say, right? Whatever today, whatever, and it will go down at 5:10, right? Whatever, 5:15. So we have now a 10-hour day,
So you divide
right?
120 minutes, which is 2 hours, throughout the whole day, divided by 10.
I'm sorry, what's that again?
So if it's normal hours are 12 hours, halachic hours are 10 hours.
Right.
And 2 additional hours, it's 120 minutes. You divide that by 10, which is 10 halachic hours, so 12 minutes each, less.
No, what I'm telling you is that you have to take the 10 hours and divide it up into 12.
Okay.
You understand? So that comes up to 50 minutes.
50.
Right, 50 minutes, yes.
Okay.
So, but if it's a 9 hours, it's going to come to 45 minutes. If it's 11 hours, it'll come out to be 55 minutes. Because each hour is a 5-minute interval, right, for the halachic hour. That's the way it works. Why is that? Because when you divide up 60 minutes into 12 units, you get 5 minutes, right? That's what it is. So each hour takes off 5 minutes. That's the way it is, right? So what does that mean? That right now we have a 50-minute hour, right? According to halacha. Before we had even less, right? Like 45, 46, 47, whatever, and then it's going to get longer. In the spring, we're going to hit like the equinox. It's like the middle, right in the middle. So it's going to be 12 and 12. So there you're going to have a 60-minute hour, like, on the clock. That's the real hour, right? That's only 2 periods of the year you're going to have that, right? In the spring and in the fall.
Okay.
Because and everything is even.
Solstice.
Even Steven, right? Everything is even. 12 hours here, 12 hours there. That's the way it is, right? So in those times, you're going to be, halachic hour is going to be 60 minutes. What about in the summer? How is it going to be, right? Summer, the day will become much, much longer, right? So what does that mean? Over here in America, in the summer, instead of going down the sun 4:30, it goes down 8:30. Whoa, right? That's major, right? It's a big increase, right? So what does that mean? You're going to have like let's be like, you're going to have like a 15-hour day. You understand? So more or less, right?
Right.
So that means that the hour will go up from what? From 60 to 75. You know what I mean? Each hour will be 75 minutes. If maybe a little bit less than that, whatever. Approximately, I'm telling you, right? That's the way it works. So these halachic hours, everything that we calculate in Jewish law goes according to that. We don't calculate anything according to the regular hour. Everything that we do, all the times that we have, there are so many important times for the Jewish people, right? We have all kinds of important things. Everything is halachic hours. So what does that mean, practically speaking, right? As we were talking today about the issue of dawn, right? So we discussed this issue, right? What did we discuss? We discussed the issue that, as we said in the former lectures, right? We talked about this, that the best time to pray Shachrit is Netzach Hama, right? When the sun comes up. That's in the Shulchan Aruch. Siman Pei Tet, over there, right? You're going to find it. 89.1, 89.1-1, right? That's what you're going to find over there. So, okay, fine. But it also says over there that if a person prayed from Amud HaShachar, from the dawn, he fulfilled the obligation, b'diavad. Shouldn't do that lechatchila. But b'diavad, if he did it, he fulfills the obligation. So we already mentioned, right, that by the way, there's a rule in halacha which says b'shatat chak ki b'diavad da'adameh. You know what that means? That means that when there's a pressing situation, it's considered to be like b'diavad. What does that mean? B'diavad is not the same thing as this, right? Pressing situation. B'diavad means once you did it, it was done. That's it, right? You can't go back now and change it. You did it. What was done? But when we say that the concept of shatat chak, you know what that means? It's not, you didn't do it yet, but it's a pressing situation. You have no choice,
right.
So we say that that's also considered like b'diavad. What does that mean? We give you permission to do it like that, lechatchila even. Why? Because it's a pressing situation. You know what I mean? You have no choice.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about today, right? A person is going to a job or whatever, to a school, so he has to be there at a certain time. So what that means is that what? That if a person really has to go that early to the job or to the school, whatever it is, what he does is he prays Amidah instead of Netzach Hama. He's going to move it up to after Amud HaShachar, after dawn. Right?
Move it down.
Whatever.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay.
It depends on which way.
No problem.
Which mountain you're looking from, this mountain or that mountain, whatever. Okay, whatever. So I guess you're right, whatever. But anyway, the point is, right, that you get the point. So now the dawn, right, as we said, that's the way it's calculated. So now, right, what does that mean? How do we calculate dawn? Right? We said about halachic hours how to calculate. But what about dawn? How do we know when it's dawn? How do we know when it's Netzach Hama? How do we know when it's sunrise, right? Sunrise is actually something which is visible. I mean, you can see it. You can see the sun coming up, So once you see like the first sparks of the sun coming up there, that's the time to start praying Amidah, according to the best way to do it. Right? You see it, the body of the sun is just becoming visible. It doesn't have to be the whole body of the sun, right? According to most opinions. There is also another opinion, but according to most opinions, you don't have to have the whole body of the sun up. Even just a little bit, the first sliver that you see of the sun, the first little banana, you got there. It's already enough to start praying.
The sun itself or the ray?
No, the sun itself, the body of the sun.
The body.
Yes.
The moment you see it over the
right, right. That's one that's called Netzachama. Right. So now, what about Amud HaShachar? Right. So it says in the Gemara, Arve Psachim, over there in this parak, right? It says over there in the Gemara that when is dawn? Right. So it tells you, dawn is 4 mil. How to walk 4 mil, right? Mil is like a mile, whatever. In halakha, in the times of the Talmud, that was the measure, mil. Mm-hmm. Today we call it mile, right? It's something similar, but sure. Actually the mile is much bigger, than the mil. Okay. The mil is more like similar to the kilometer in terms of size, Sure. It's not a mile because a mile is double that.
Right.
More or less, right? More or less. 2.2 times. Very good. Okay, you got all the measurements. Baruch Hashem. Very good. So you always I like to have those statistics. I like to have them too. Okay, so you need somebody like that.
Sure.
Okay, so now as you said, that it comes up, right? So the dawn, that says the Gemara, it's 72 minutes. What does that mean? 4 miles.
Right.
4 mil, right? So the question is, what is a mil? How do we know what that is, right?
Right.
So the truth is that there's a big machloket regarding that. What is a mil? How much distance is that, right? What does that mean? How long does it take to walk that distance, right? Because that's what we're talking about. The time that it takes to walk a mil, right? Which is about a kilometer, as we said. That's the time that we call the mil, right? The time of the mil. Right. So what is that? According to the accepted opinion, Shulchan Aruch and most poskim, right? Even though the Rambam doesn't agree with this, by the way, the Rambam brings a different thing. But according to Shulchan Aruch, it's 18 minutes each mil. Each mil is 18 minutes. What does that mean? It takes 18 minutes to walk that distance.
Right.
That's what it means, right?
Normal pace.
Yes, normal walking, right. So what does that mean? Now, if you times it by 4, which the Gemara says is Amud HaShachar, comes out to be 72, right? 18 times 4 is 72. I'm terrible at math. Okay, whatever. So, beginner's luck. right. Okay, so 72 minutes. So that means that what? Amud HaShachar, according to the Gemara in Rabbi Psachim, is 72 minutes before the sunrise, before the Netzach Hama. So, what does that mean? That a person, if he wants to calculate this, but now we have a problem, right? We just said a few minutes ago when we started that everything that we calculate in Jewish law is done by Halachic hours. Shaot Zmaniyot, it's called, right, in Hebrew, right? So if that's the case, is it really 72 minutes? No, it depends on the time of the year, right? What does that mean? In the winter it's going to be shorter, in the summer it's going to be longer. Why? Because 72 minutes is just like an average thing, the median, right? But what happens is that since the hour gets longer, right? Because it's not 72 minutes. It doesn't say that in the Gemara, 72 minutes. You know what it says? It says 4 mil, right? The time it takes to walk that month. So the truth is, right, that this it's an hour and a fifth. That's how it is, right? 1 hour and 1/5 hour.
To walk up.
Right. So if it's the average hour, it's 72 minutes. 1 hour and a fifth.
Right.
Right? But what about now that hour gets shorter in the winter, right? So what happens is that now, since the hour is 45 minutes or 50 minutes in the winter, right? So that means the hour now is like that. So what does that mean? Now another fifth hour, right? Another fifth. So how much you got to add? You got to add, like, let's say, not even 10, right? Because really, right, that fifth also has to be done halachically. You know what I mean?
I see.
So it also gets shorter.
Derivative.
You understand? Right, exactly. So therefore what happens is that also gets shorter. Meaning what? The average should be 12 minutes, that fifth, right?
Right.
But now it's going to go down to, let's say, 6 or 7. You know what I mean? On the extreme side, right? It won't go down to 6 to 7. It'll go down to, let's say, 9, right? 9 minutes, something like that, right? So what does that mean? That at the shortest time of the year, right, in the winter, instead of having a 72-minute interval between sunrise and dawn, now I'm going to have a 60-minute interval, or less than that, 55 minutes. Can you imagine? So that means that the dawn is also like that. The dawn is also going to be that short interval. And this is the problem with these luchot, these charts. They don't
Right.
calculate all these
They
things.
don't calculate.
They don't. They have a bunch of whatever. I don't want to say. Right?
Right.
I don't want to self them, but the truth is, right, that they're not really so up on things. These people, they're not looking at the poskim to see what's going on,
Right.
how to calculate these things. The truth is, that
It
to
shifts.
be honest with you, what they are relying on, these luchot, these charts, is one thing, right? It's brought down in some books that the custom in Europe was, to calculate the halachic hour. You know how they did it? You know how they calculated it? They didn't do 72 minutes and all this stuff, that we're talking about. What they did was, basically, they did 90 minutes before the sunrise and 90 minutes after sunset. Can you imagine? So you add 90 minutes on both sides. And this is, if you do it this way, right? That was a custom in Europe, but
Right.
amongst many communities. So if you do it this way, it comes out to be a totally different ballgame. You know what I'm saying? What does that mean? According to this custom that they had, dawn is not 72 minutes before.
90.
Right, it's 90, right. So that makes it into a different
Holy
cheshbon.
business.
It makes it into a different calculation altogether. You understand? But this is against the Gemara.
How can I do this then?
There are some rabbis, who bring this down. You know what I mean? There are some things there to rely on. But the Ikar, right, even according to the Ashkenazi poskim, most of them don't say like this.
Is it
You
from
understand?
the Geonim or from the,
Huh?
where does this come from? The Geonim? Or
No, it's Achronim, more like,
Okay,
this
so
is a
there's
custom,
no sources.
No, there's no really,
There's no tradition for this.
no. It's against the Gemara, as we said, right?
How can it hold
Thank
water?
you very much. I don't know what to tell you. The truth is, right, as we said, there's also another way to look at it. It's not exactly heresy. You know why? Because there's also another way to look at it. Maybe according to those opinions, right, the meal is longer. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But that's not the accepted opinion. Because even according to Rambam, right, who doesn't agree with the Shulchan Aruch,
Right.
he says the meal is 22 minutes instead of 18. You know what I mean?
That is
But even that's not going to come out to be 90 minutes. You know what I mean? That's not, because if you take 22 and you times it by 4, right? What are you going to get? Right, exactly. So you see, that's pretty much.
They rely on that.
You know what I'm saying? Pretty much that's what it is. But the problem is that it doesn't take. First of all, it doesn't take into consideration the halachic hours. You know what I mean? They're using a constant all year round, which is, it's ridiculous. Why? Because if you're talking about, like, let's say in the in the winter, it's like half that.
Right.
Because the halachic hours are much shorter.
Right.
But the truth is, right, that what the Shulchan Aruch didn't paskin this way. Like the Rambam. You know what I mean? So they're going to Shulchan Aruch, which is not really, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to? But that's the custom. By the way, there is some justification, maybe, to say like that, like this, that. But I wouldn't, bet on this. I'm not a betting man. I'm not a gambler. But what I'm saying is like one thing, that in Europe they had a different horizon. They were like a little bit more north. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the days were longer over there. The truth is, right?
Right.
After what I mean to say is that the twilight time was longer. Because of the horizon issue.
Right.
As you go towards the North Pole, the days get longer, twilight gets longer. There are places that never gets dark over there. You know what I mean? In the North Pole, right? You know that, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So as the more north you go, the twilight period gets longer.
That's the reasoning.
Right. Even they say, by the way, even in France, it's quite long. It's much longer than New York.
Yeah, it's North
You know
Europe.
what I mean?
It's like Europe.
Yeah, it's quite long. It's quite long. Yeah, over there.
Germany,
so they don't have the same horizon.
So they were Ashkenaz when they were doing this, right?
Right. So the truth is, right, that they're probably relying on this, concept that the days over there, the horizon was more like a depth to this, matched up. But the truth is, right, when it comes to Eretz Israel, it's totally wrong. It's totally off. And the problem is that they're doing it also over there. You're still using the system. You know what I mean? Which is like totally not anywhere. In other words, they're doing a custom which is absolutely incompatible with the place where they live in. It's opposite exactly. That's what it is. But they don't. Unfortunately, they're not really. They're not. Nobody's really watching out for these things. You know what I mean? Nobody's really paying attention to these things. But the truth is that that even in the Ashkenazi poskim, Magen Avraham, Ber Hetev, they also say, right, that dawn is 72 minutes before sunrise. You know what I mean? So this is like the accepted shita amongst them as well. You know what I mean? But for some reason, the custom is not like that. So what can I tell you? But anyway, they have a custom like this. That's something else. We don't have this custom. You know what I mean? The Sfardim, we don't have this custom. So therefore, we definitely cannot rely on this, shita at all. We have no, there's nothing. So therefore, if you're looking at those charts, as you said, right, that for instance now, right, this time of year, according to our, what we just said now, according to Shulchan Aruch, according to accepted opinion that we just mentioned, that what? we said the meal is 18 minutes, right? According to Shulchan Aruch. And also the dawn, right, is 72 minutes before the sunrise. So if that's the case, in the Shaul Zmaniyot, it's halachic hours, right? So if that's the case, what happens is that according to our shita, the accepted shita in the halakha, not talking about their custom, right? But in halakha, the accepted shita is that now dawn should be, like let's say Netzach Hamad today, sunrise was 7:07, whatever, right? Whatever, or 7:06, whatever. So that means that dawn will be about an hour before that, 6:05, 6:10. You know what I mean? So that's like totally incompatible with the, it's like, and according to them, it comes out like a half hour before that.
Yeah, like 5:30.
So you understand what I'm saying?
They don't make a mistake.
It's totally off.
Yeah. They make a mistake on all the shachar.
Oh yeah, the nets is something because something's visible. It's not. There's no calculation there with nets. You know what I mean? It's something you're visible. Whatever you see, that's what it is. You know what I mean? But we have to talk about that, by the way, because nowadays we don't really see the sun, because it's being blocked by the buildings and all these things, and all kinds of issues. So then we're basically relying today on like astronomical calculation, on computers, programs, all kinds of things. According to the calculation of the computer, the program, it should come up at this time. It's like a calculation according to the movement of the planets. You know what I mean? The motion, and all these things, right? Yeah.
Well, here's the 7:06 is Netzach Hamad.
Today. Yeah, it sounds. Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
7:02, 7:06. I mean, the same region.
No, 7:02. I think you said was next week, right? Next Monday.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Even though what I do is I personally wait 2 minutes after that.
Yeah, 2 minutes always.
Because I was told by several rabbis that the person should do that. The reason is because according to the astronomical calculation, which they're relying on in most of these cases, actually you won't see the body of the sun at that time. You know what I mean? Why? Because it's not so accurate 100%. Depends on the elevation and all kinds of issues. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of issues that take effect there. That's in theory. It should be at that time.
Right, but it's not.
But practically speaking, you may not see it at that time. So if you wait 2 or 4 minutes after, it's more safe, right? And a lot of people do that. Yes.
That if the person doesn't do the right halachic time for nets, they can miss nets. How long do you have?
Right, but the thing is, that you have to understand one thing. To miss nets is no big deal. Why? Because anyway, you're davening at the right time. If you say like you start 10 minutes after nets, you're okay. Everything's the chatchila. But when you go before nets, you're doing bediavad. You understand? This is the problem. So going before nets is much more dangerous than going after. You understand?
Right.
Your whole tefillah turns into bediavad. Which is very bad. Why? Because you woke up early. You made all this effort to go out there. You have to wash your face and get the sleep out of your eyes. Like walking around like a zombie. Drinking coffee. And then for what? To daven bediavad? That's what you did it for.
Right.
All that effort. Does that make any sense? You know what I mean? So therefore, that's why the poskim say, right? Don't do that. You're being a fool, right? And regarding that, it says, right? Right? That in other words, the reward that he's getting for doing all this is less than the punishment that he's getting. So what's the point? Why would he want to do that, right?
Most people they want to bring nets because it's vatikin, and there's a certain benefit that comes with it.
Right, there's a lot of benefits. It's true, right?
Spiritual benefits.
Absolutely, there's a lot of benefits. It's an amazing thing, but the bottom line is, right, that a person should, good advice to wait like two minutes after. Right? Yes, because we're not really sure if the sun is really up yet. I can tell you, right, that in Jerusalem. This is even more pronounced. You know why? Because there are people who go according. In Jerusalem, in Israel, there's a lot of nets minyanim over there. A lot, all over the place. They're springing up left and right. Baruch Hashem, people are getting very strong over there. Very powerful. They're getting very vehement about their observance. They're very very adamant about their service. So it's very good. So what I'm telling you is like this, right? That over there they have 2 nets minyanim, right? Or let's say in one neighborhood they have like 5 minyanim that do nets or whatever, in the religious neighborhoods I'm talking about, right? So, but the problem is like this, right? That one starts 4 minutes before, and the other one starts 4 minutes after. So who's right, who's wrong, right?
Right.
So the truth is, right? There's two different shitot over there, opinions over there. One is they're doing according to astronomical calculation, like we said, right? Which is according to the computer, right? And the other one is that they're using some kind of machines that they place on the hills, and they actually they sense their sensors that see the sun coming up. They sense that. So this is considered to be more accurate. You understand? So the difference between this and this in Jerusalem is about 4 minutes, Can you imagine? So it's quite the, it's quite right. Quite. Yes. So you see from there, by the way, that a person should wait. Probably that's probably the best thing to do. I've heard from a lot of big gedolim that they do wait.
That issue, you don't want to play with that.
No, you don't want to play with that.
It's not worth it.
No, for sure. All the effort that you made was for nothing. You know what I mean? But what do you need that for? Right. So that's exactly the point. So therefore, right, as we said, getting back to what we said, right, that this shita of 90 minutes, right, is not our shita. We don't go by that. We have no business with that. You know what I mean? That's the way it is. So then, what should we do? Right? The way we do it is like this. We do halachic hours, right? Because everything is by the way, the Rama writes in the Shulchan Aruch, and he brings this from the Rambam, right? That they say that everything is done according to halachic hours. That means that what? Also, this calculation should be done with halachic hours, not constant like they do. This minhag like that, custom 90-minute constant all year round. There's such a thing like this. It's against halakha. It's against logic. It's against it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't go that way. So a person should not do that. It's not the proper thing to do. To do a 90-minute constant all year round. But they have a custom like that. From Europe, okay, fine. But as I said, right, in Eretz Israel, it doesn't apply this custom. It's totally against the halakha. And also, I think in America, it doesn't apply either. To be honest with you, because it's not so northward. Like in New York is not so north like Europe. It's not like that. No, not the same thing. It's like somewhere in between. In between Jerusalem and Europe. Right. Something like halfway, right? Yeah. Halfway through, whatever, something like that, right? So therefore, there's no reason to do that. So a person what you should do is like this, right? In the winter, right? The halachic hour, as we said, right, goes down to 45, 50 minutes. So therefore, this 72-minute interval will become like about 60 minutes. You know what I mean? Or even less than that, or 55 minutes. So therefore, he shouldn't pray, right, anything, that pertains to the morning until that time comes. You know what I mean? And he shouldn't put on tefillin either, obviously, right? Or talit or whatever. Make a bracha. It's a bracha levatala. You're making a bracha at night. You're not obligated at night to do these things. So you're making a bracha levatala. You know what I mean? So this is not a good thing to do. A person has to wait for everything. A person has to wait, right? And also the truth is, right, that even if the dawn already came, a person is not supposed to bless on the talit and tefillin. He has to wait another 10 minutes. Why? Because you're not really supposed to lechatchila put on tefillin at dawn. You know what I mean? Or talit. You should wait until 10 minutes after, because you have to have enough light you can see your friend. Right. We talked about that, right? Minutes, yes. That you don't know so well, you don't know so well, from 4 amot, about 6 feet away, whatever. So it has to be that much light. You understand? So therefore, a person really should. So what can he do, right? A person who has a difficult time with this because he has to go very early to the job, whatever. He's making bagels, whatever, something like that. Right. Got to be there early to boil them up, in the cauldron. He's got to boil up the bagels in the morning, right? So what do you do, right? So the truth is, right, there are some leniencies, even more that I just told you, right? Which is what? That a person, if he's really pressed for time, okay? So what does he do? There is a shita, like this. There is an opinion like this. I'll tell you a very interesting opinion. There are 3 big rabbis, Rishonim, who are they, by the way? The Ravan, the Ravad, and Rashi, right? They all say that b'diavad, if a person prayed shachrit before the dawn, he fulfills his obligation. Can you imagine? The truth is, right, that most of the poskim don't agree with this. That the Rambam, the Rosh, the Shulchan Aruch, right? Most of the poskim don't agree with this. It's not halacha. Not the halacha. Everybody agrees this is not the halacha. But it's an interesting opinion, And the truth is, there is probably some merit to it also. What is the merit? The truth is, right, that Rashi, and the Ravad, they were both mekubalim also. These 2 guys. Why do I mention that? It's because they probably knew something about these things that maybe we're not lacking some knowledge, but. You know what it is? That the truth is that Shachrit is a time of chesed, time of kindness, And we also know that the later part of the night also has that quality. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not exactly the same, by the way, because the different qualities, they shift as time goes on.
Right.
You know what I mean? They shift. So the quality of the morning is not exactly the quality of the late night. It's similar, but it's not the same thing. So, right, what they want to say, but the avad, that quality is already there somewhat. Quality of chesed, so you fulfill it. You know what I'm saying? That's what they want to say.
I see.
This is a very deep thing, It's a deep thing, right? We don't pass in this way. We don't go like this going to halacha, but you can use that now, right, for our advantage, though. What does that mean? let's say a person as we said, he has to be at the job, let's say at 7 o'clock. Not like you, right? You have to be there at 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever it is. There are some people who have to be there at 7 or 6:30, right? So what do you do with that? What do you do? So what you do is like this, right? That a person has no choice. What he can do is he can at night, right? He starts to say, Tfilat HaShachar. What does that mean? He will say Birkat HaShachar before the dawn. No problem.
Right.
You can say that, right? According to the Kabbalah, according to the Arizal, you're not to do that.
Yeah,
even the Chatchila you should do it. Right, exactly. You know that, right? So, okay, so fine. We're going to rely on the Arizal and say Birkat HaShachar, even though this is against the Rambam, by the way.
Oh, really?
It's against the Rambam. Okay, fine. We'll be okay. We'll be all right,
Right.
So, we'll rely on the Arizal. We'll say all these brachot before the dawn. Okay, fine. So then what happens is like this, right? That you're going to start now saying korbanot, right? The ones who say, right? We say, Sfardim, Baruch Hashem, we say korbanot. There are some who skip that, Not a good thing to do, by the way, to skip korbanot.
Why?
It's not, according to Kabbalah, this is not a good thing, right? As you know, right? I don't want to get into that now. There's not time for that, right? But the truth is that korbanot is a very important thing according to Kabbalah because you're going up in the worlds, right? So korbanot is a keneged olam asiyah, right? If you don't, you have to, in order to get to olam atzilut, to the top level, you're praying the Amidah, you're going to be close to Hashem, right next to Hashem, in front of Him, right? You have to build up that ladder, get up to the olamot. You got to gradually go up. So if you don't do korbanot, you're missing the bottom rung, the foundation you don't have. You know what I mean? For the olamot. Okay, whatever. But I don't want to get into that now. There's not time. But anyway, the point is, right, that you want to say korbanot like a good Jew. Baruch Hashem, God bless you. Right? So you can start saying that if you have no choice at night. Why? Because you're going to rely on Rashi and the Ravad and the Ravan.
Right.
You know what I mean? That they say you can do that, right? The Arizal, that was Birkat HaShachar. That's a different story, right?
Korbanot, right?
He didn't talk about that.
Okay.
So now what happens is like this, right? That you're going to say korbanot. So what's the worst thing that could be, right? You said it at night. Okay, fine. But there's no bracha over there, bracha levatala. There's no, it's not like you said some blessing or whatever.
Yeah, but it could be,
so you're okay.
I'm sorry.
You know what I mean?
Wouldn't that be considered like Talmud Torah then?
No, the bracha is not a Talmud.
No,
blessing,
what
right?
I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's fine. There's no problem with that. You're saying Torah. You're saying Torah.
Yeah,
it's fantastic, right? But right, exactly. No problem with that. You can say korbanot, okay? Because we're going to rely on these poskim. So then what happens is once you get to Baruch Shemar, right? There you have to wait till dawn. Why? Because you're saying a blessing already.
Right.
So we cannot do bracha levatala, right? Safek brachot lakil. So there's no way to make the bracha. You cannot rely on these three poskim that go against the halacha to make a bracha. Right? This we don't allow according to halacha.
Only one second.
Right? So not because of one safek, because it's not the halacha like that. You know what I mean? So it's bracha levatala. Right? You're right. There's really one safek. You're right.
You need two.
There's one safek, but not only is it a safek, but it's not safek shakul. You know what that means?
Right. It's because it's
not an equal safek. It's not equal. When we say safek, we usually want something like 50-50 more or less.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is like 90-10. More like it's a very weak safek. You know what I mean?
Right.
So therefore, we don't rely on that.
The only reason we can do korbanot, sorry to cut you off again,
because there's no danger there, right? Exactly. There's no danger.
Right, you lose nothing.
Right, exactly. You didn't lose nothing. So therefore, we're going to do korbanot right before the dawn. We're going to do Birkat HaShachar, Birkat Torah, no problem. So then, what you're going to do is, right, wait for the dawn and start saying Baruch Shemar, and then go to the little gradually Kriyat Shema and Amidah.
Well,
you know what I mean?
All these things.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
so that's what we said, Baruch Shemar, right? That's the idea.
That's the whole thing.
From there, right, and onwards, right, everything after the dawn. So a person who has no choice can do it this way, right? But as we said, that what? Person has to do one thing, even though this is allowed to do what we just said. But nevertheless, right, since the halachic hours now are shorter, you have to wait not till 5:45 to do Baruch Shemar. That's too early, according to what we said. You have to wait till like 6:05, 6:10, whatever, something like that. So there's no way to do Baruch Shemar at 5:30, it's too early. It's still not dawn yet, according to what we said.
Right.
So this is the idea, you understand? So a person has to know all these things, right? Because people read things on the luchot, on the charts, and then they don't know. But see, when it comes to what I wanted to tell you is like this, right? That's regarding the calculation of dawn. So there, right, as we said, we don't go according to this custom of 90 minutes. It's way, way too far, right? Way too far. So then, what about the calculation of the halachic hours? Right? How is that done, right? So the truth is, according to the accepted custom that we have today amongst all the Jews, the way we make a halachic hour for prayers which are mostly derabanan, right? They're all rabbinical, the prayers, right? So since it's derabanan, we go according to the lenient opinion, which is the Gra, right? That says that what? That we should start counting after Netzachama, after sunrise, not after dawn. Because according to Magen Abraham, you have to start counting after dawn, right? And we don't do that. We already mentioned, right, the former lectures, that even when it comes to Kriyat Shema, which is like the Oraita, the halacha is like lenient opinion, like the Gra. And also here, which is all Derabanan. You know what I mean?
Right.
So therefore, what we do is, the way we calculate halachic hours is we go from sunrise to sunset. Take that, divide it up into 12 units, and each one is an hour. So now, as you said, it's 51 minutes, right? Today, whatever. So, by the way, if you can't do that, let's say, for some reason, you're not so good at math, whatever, a much easier way to do it, as I told you today. What's the easier way to do it? Look in the chart, right? And look at the Kriyat Shema time of the Gra, right, which is now about 9:40, right, at this time of year. Right. And then look at the Sof Zman Tefillah, the ends of the Tefillah time. That's 1 hour away from the other, right? Why? Because the third hour, at the end of the third hour, Kriyat Shema, that's when it ends, the time of Kriyat Shema. The fourth hour is when the Tefillah ends, the time of Tefillah, the time of prayers. So therefore, what happens is like this, right? That you have 1 hour apart, these two things.
Right.
So once you measure those two things, that's your hour. So if you can't do the 12-hour method, this is the much easier way to get it, right?
That's backwards one of those hours, and you have Halachic.
Right, exactly. But you have to add another fifth, right?
Right, the fifth.
Because it's an hour and a fifth.
Derivative. Okay.
Right, that's right. Exactly, derivative, yeah, exactly. So that's the way it's done, right? So this is the way it works. Right? That's the only way to do it. There's no other way. There's no magic, magic. It's very simple, very whatever. It's very well known things, right? This is the way we calculate the halachic hours, like this, right? We divide it up into 12 units, and that's the way it's done. Okay, fine. So therefore, when it comes to the issue of shachrit, this is the way it has to be done, right? We can't be any more lenient than what we just said, right? That's the end of the leniency, right? That's the edge. That's the edge of the leniency. We can't go more than that. Right, exactly. That's the edge, right? That's the cutting edge of the halacha, right? So what about now regarding, right? There's also another interesting thing, by the way, which I actually I wrote about this. I had a tshuva, regarding this, because there was an issue regarding this in our yeshiva. What was the issue? The issue was like this, right? You have to know a little bit background information. That there was also, we discussed now the beginning time of shachrit, right? The first time of shachrit. There's also first time of mincha as well, right? The mincha prayer, right? So how is that? How does that work, right? Mincha gedolah, right? We have mincha ketana, we have mincha gedolah. We have two different times of mincha, right? So regarding the first time, right, which is mincha gedolah, it's called, right? That's the earlier time. How do we calculate that? So the way it works is like this, right? That we take midday, right, which is the end of the 6th hour according to halachic hours.
Okay.
Right? Now, in this time of year, midday is 12:10.
Right.
Okay. So you take that 12:10. That's your starting point. And says the Gemara, you have to add also a half hour after that. That's your first time for mincha. So what does that mean? The first time for mincha, according to a simple understanding, will be 12:40. That will be the earliest time you can pray mincha.
Yes.
Right? So what's the problem? Seems to be pretty clear, right? Yeah, that's midday. Midday is chatzot. Right? So that seems to be pretty clear, right? But it's not so clear. You know why? Because the question is like this, right? When you add that half hour after chatzot, right, to get to the time of mincha, is that a halachic hour or is it a regular hour? This is the question, right? You understand? You're a smart man, God bless you, but there are people who don't agree with this. Why do I tell you this? You know what it is? There are some achronim, who wanted to make a chidush regarding this. They wanted to say that when it comes to this time, it's not halachic, it's a regular half hour. So the question is, doesn't make sense, right?
Why would you add coffee to tea? To drink tea?
So in order to understand this opinion, you have to get a little background information, right? What is the reason why I have to wait a half hour? What's the reason for that? I mean, once the midday comes, it's already like time for mincha, right? Okay, let's see what that means. So once midday has come, it's already time for mincha, in essence, because the morning is over.
Right.
So why do we have to wait for a half hour? What opinions are we covering? What are we doing over here?
Some say 18 minutes, some say 15 minutes, 12 minutes, different.
I'll explain to you how it works. Right? the problem is like this. The Chazal say the reason you have to wait a half hour is because what happens is the sun in midday is right over your head, right overhead.
Right.
You understand? It's right in the middle.
Right.
So the problem is that at that time, really, according to halacha, according to a simple halacha, you should be allowed to pray mincha already. You know, because it's now going towards the west, the sun.
Right.
It's declining.
It's shifting now.
Right. It's declining.
Right.
That's already called erev. It's called erev. It's called evening. You know, whatever. You know?
That moment's called
Right.
evening.
Right. There's different levels of evening. You know what I mean?
Sure.
This is the first level, right?
Decline.
Exactly, the decline, right. Why is it called erev? Because erev is the west. It's going towards the west.
Right.
That's the idea.
The Mizrach.
Erev is west, right. So what happens is like this, right? That it starts declining, but what happens is like the naked eye, when you look up in the sky, right? You look at the sun, you can make a mistake. You know?
Right, because the glare.
You're not exactly sure, especially when the day is cloudy. You understand? When you have a cloudy day, you have a big problem.
Yeah.
You know, in those days, everything was primitive. They didn't have all these things that we have today.
Plug, not clouds.
They didn't have satellites in those days, right?
No,
They didn't have satellites. So because of that, right? They had no way to look through the clouds and see what's going on. You know what I mean?
Right, the problem.
So what happens is the Chazal said, you know what? Wait another half hour just to make sure that you're not making a mistake because of
Right,
this.
right.
This was the reason why.
But if you were to pray, do you still have b'diavad or no?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll get to that. B'ezras Hashem. I just want before we get to that.
Sure.
It's a very interesting question what you're asking. Very good, very practical question.
Right.
But I just want to get to this point, right? Make this point over here. So the way it works like this, right? That they say, according to this opinion, that says it should be an even hour, even half hour, not halachic. Why? You know why? Because they say, right, when it comes to the tilting of the sun, you know, it should be like a standard. It should be constant. Why? Because, in other words, I can't tell you, you know what? Today, wait 20 minutes, and then, 6 months later, wait 30 minutes, and then 40 minutes. You know what I mean? According to the season, because the whole point is, right, there's a certain mistake that a person can make, half hour.
There's a logic.
Right. So, but what? Sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes?
Right,
you understand? This is the logic.
Right, there's logic there. I get it.
But the truth is, halacha is not like that. Right? The question is why? The reason is like this, right? That the truth is, if a person really understands a little bit, there's two reasons why this is not the halacha. Number one is because the Rambam said so, right? What does that mean? He said everything is done halachic hours. Everything, period. Right? And that's the way it comes out from the Gemara also. That's the way it comes out from the Ramah also brings it down. So what does that mean? When he says everything, it means everything. There's no exception to that. If there was an exception, he would say so.
Right.
You know what I mean? Somebody would have mentioned this before. You know, if there was an exception to this rule. It should be written in the Talmud, it should be written in the Rishonim, it should be written in the Shulchan Aruch. Right? Nobody mentioned this thing. So once nobody mentioned it, the only thing we have is the rule, everything, period. That's the way it is. There's no other, you understand? So the person has to be logical, you know, about this. You know, hey, listen, you know, everything is everything. Don't try to make excuses now. You know? Okay, that's one thing. But there's also another thing, which is that what? The truth is that this claim that half hour of the tilting of the sun, you know, has to be constant. Because, you know, how can you make a mistake like this and then like that? Every day is different. You know, making a mistake. It's not really a big, you know, that's not really a big proof. You know why? Because the truth is, right, if a person knows the way the sun, the motion of the sun and the earth relatively moving against each other, what happens is like this, right, that the sun always sets in the west, as we said. Right? You know it is. It always rises in the east. That never changes this thing. Okay? It's not going to happen the other way around. Whatever. So, now what happens is like this, right? But the truth is, according to the seasons, sometimes it's northwest, sometimes it's due west, sometimes it's southwest. Because the horizon is changing all the time. Why is that? Because as the earth circles the sun, right, goes around, it also tilts. It goes like this. It has a tilt like this. It doesn't just circle like that. It also tilts, right? Like this. So what happens is that as it tilts, this is what makes the days and nights shorter and longer. This is the reason why this happens. You understand? The tilt that causes that.
Right.
This is the reason why. This is the reason why it is. So therefore, what happens like this, right? That just like right. So what happens like this, right? Since the sun already is going this way or that way, you know, south, southwest, northwest, or due west, right? So that also affects the tilt as well. Meaning what? It can tilt also faster at certain times. You know what I mean? So therefore, there's really no constant of the tilt of the sun as well.
No.
It can change according to the horizon,
Isn't
according to the
halachic.
season. You know what I mean? So therefore, there's really no logic like that to say that it should always be the same amount of time. Because the tilt of the sun is also changing. You know what I mean?
Right,
So the person's naked eye is not going to see the same thing in the summer as he's going to see in the winter. It's going to be a different, or it's going to be a different phenomenon there. You know, in his eyes, it's not going to be the same thing. So therefore, because of all these reasons, right, the truth is, according to most poskim, right, there's no difference between this din, it's also halachic hours, and or the other din, it's all halachic hours. It's all the same. It's always halachic hours. So, but the truth is, right, that here also we have an interesting thing, which is what? If you look in the Mishnah Brura, right, he brings down there in this din, he brings down both opinions, right? That it should be even hour, even half hour, or even halachic half hour. So he says, I'm not sure which is the halacha. He says, I can't really, I'm not really sure. So what they do is a lot of Ashkenazi, communities, they say, this is the Mishnah Brura had a safek, he had a doubt, so therefore let's go l'chumra both ways, In other words, in the winter we'll go l'chumra, we'll make it longer. In the summer, we'll keep it as long as it is, always making it longer. So this way, right, just in case that this is the halacha, that's the halacha, it'll always be safe. It's like an insurance policy, you know what I mean? That's what they're doing. But the truth is, we don't go like that. If you look in the Yalkut Yosef, over there it says the half hours are halachic hours, because this is the simple understanding of all the texts that we have. There's no,
Rambam.
you know what I mean? The Rambam, the Ramah, also the Ramah says it himself.
Okay, so you have
So meaning what? That there's really nobody argues with this halakha. You understand? There's nobody comes and says, no, this is not right. The truth is that there is actually a Rosh who talks about this, a little bit differently, a little bit argues with that. But the truth is, right, that halachically speaking, this is what's brought down in halakha. That we're talking about always it's halachic hours. So therefore, right, there's really no reason. So a person, what the proper thing to do, right, according to our understanding, is not to be machmir this way and that way. Why? Because the truth is, right, there's also another reason why there's no reason to be machmir. You know why? Because this din is derabanan. What does that mean? The rabbis were gozer. They made a gezerah. They made a takana. They made a decree, right? That what? You should wait a half hour. So since this whole thing is rabbinical, you understand? Why should we be machmir? Why should we say safek derabanan yakel? Right? We go leniently when it's derabanan.
Right.
It's out of derabanan.
Right.
So even according to them, that's a safek. Anyway, you should go lenient. You understand? There's also another reason why. Right, exactly. So therefore, right, there's no reason to be machmir. It's not deoraita. What is deoraita? This is deoraita, this thing? It's not deoraita, So therefore, right here also, what we do is we go, right, according to the Torah, really, you don't need to wait a half hour. This is the rabbis made this.
Right.
So therefore, what we do is that we always do halachic hours when it comes to this also. What does that mean? In the summer it gets shorter, right? I'm sorry, in the winter it gets shorter, summer gets longer, right? So what does that mean? That in the summer, instead of being 30 minutes, it'll be like 25 minutes, 22 minutes, you know what I mean? Something like that. It'll get shorter. That's the way it is, right? So that's what we always do. And in the summer, we have to make it a little bit longer, because we go into halachic hours, so therefore it's going to be like 35, 38 minutes, it's going to go up there, right? It's very similar to also Israel. In Israel also, basically, this phenomenon is very, very similar to what is over here. A little bit different, there are some differences, but that's basically how it turns out. So therefore, right, when it comes to midday as well, the truth is, according to the prevailing opinion here, it should be done halachic hours as well.
Sure.
That's the way it should be. Okay, fine. So now, right, let's get to something also interesting, right? What about chatzot, right? What about midday? Right? As we said, midday is the middle of the day. So therefore, you have to divide up the day into 12 units, as we said, right? Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes longer. So after the 6 hours over, which is the middle of the day, that's going to be midday, right? So now, this time of season, this time of year, it turns out to be about 12:10, right? The midday. So what about midnight, right? So the interesting thing is, what? They point out, right, the poskim, that midday and midnight is always the same time. In other words, if midday is 12:10, midnight is also going to be 12:10. So you don't have to figure out separately. That's the way it comes out, because whether the hours are longer or shorter, the midpoint of those hours comes out at the same time. That's the way it is, you know what I mean? It's an interesting idea, right? Whatever. That's the way it is, practically speaking. So therefore, right, you by the way, you're never going to see on the charts right? Usually in most of the charts, midday and midnight. Because why? Because they know midday, right, is the same as the midnight, the same thing. So therefore, you have to list both of them, right? So that's the way it is, right? So midnight also is going to be 12:10. That's the way it is, right? So what does that mean? That a person is there a practical issue for midnight? There are a lot of practical things there, right? Person has to say Kriyat Shema before midnight, l'chatchila, right? The rabbis were, even though according to the Torah you have all night to say Kriyat Shema, but the rabbis, right? No, according to the Torah you have all night l'chatchila, right? But the rabbi said l'chatchila say before midnight, right? Right? No, Kriyat Shema altogether, right? Altogether, right? Any Kriyat Shema.
Okay. What about the one we say after, before bed?
Right, that one also, according to the Kabbalah, that should be said also before, like half hour before midnight, like within a half hour.
I remember one time we were studying on the phone, whatever, and you said,
right, one second, right, I want to say Shema, right. Because you know why? Because according to the Kabbalah, the neshama goes up at that time, at midnight.
Even if you're awake?
Even if you're awake. For a split second, it goes up, gets judged, and comes back.
It's like
it's a split second. You don't go to sleep. You're still awake, but the higher part goes up. You know what I mean? You don't lose your conscience or whatever. You don't faint, don't worry. So it happens like this, right? That it goes up, comes down. So you want to have a safe ride for that neshama, you know? How do you get a safe ride? Say Kriyat Shema. Gives it a safe ride, right? Gets protected up there. Because otherwise they attack them, you know? They all kinds of chitzonim, all kinds of powers over there, right? Right? So those things, those bad guys over there, those bad boys, they come, they attack. So therefore, to protect the neshama, according to the Kabbalah, within a half hour before Chatzot, which when the neshama goes up, a person should say Kriyat Shema again, even though he said it before. Doesn't, regardless of that, right? Exactly, to protect the neshama. Yes. So, okay, very nice. So therefore, there's that issue of when it comes to midnight. There's also other issues, right? What is that? For instance, right, we're gonna now coming close to Pesach, right? We're not that close, but right, because it's a leap year now, it's gonna be a little bit further, right? But right, it's gonna be a little bit 2 Adars. We're gonna have 2 Adars, right? Very nice, Baruch Hashem. It's a good sign, right? Good sign, yeah. So what happens like this, right? That on Pesach, when a person eats the afikoman, he has to eat that before midnight. You know, the chatchila. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that also is affected by this. Even though, by the way, there are many communities that are not particular about this, and they eat like very late. They make the Haggadah go very, very late, and they don't do afikoman, they don't do Hallel, they don't finish, you know, until 3-4 o'clock in the morning. There's Ashkenazi communities, unfortunately, they do this, you know. But we actually, you know, the Sfaradim, we try to finish on time. If you want to continue after, you can do whatever you want. You know, you can continue do more things. You can say more stories about Yetziat Mitzrayim, how they went out of Mitzrayim. You can do whatever you want. You can all night. You can go talk about that until the morning. You know, like Rabbi Akiva, you know, the students, right? Right. That's the way. Fine, but you got to finish. You know, the Afikoman and the Hallel and the 4th cups. And everything you should finish before midnight.
Is that the Rabbanan or mostly?
It's the Rabbanan, yeah, of course. Afikoman is the Rabbanan, right?
Because like all the wine.
Because in the old days they used to Korban Pesach. You know what I mean? That's something that was deraita. That's something else. Right? You don't have Korban Pesach there.
We eat lamb.
Right, but you're not allowed to eat roasted meat on the first night. You know that, right?
No,
because it looks like Korban Pesach. You know, so therefore they right.
But roasted over fire, you mean, not in the oven.
Sorry. There are some also who are particular about roasted in the oven as well, depending on how it was done. You know what I'm saying? Was it done with oil or was it done with dry roasting? You know, if it's like dry roasting, some are it's different customs. Nisim, depends on the custom.
We'll talk about it.
You know what I mean? Different customs. You know, but the truth is, most families you will not find eating roast meat on Pesach. They don't eat. They avoid it altogether. Maybe you guys do. Oh, it's interesting. Right, but the question is, if do they know the halacha? You know, do they know? No. Are they aware of it? Maybe they're not aware of it. Okay, whatever. So anyway, we'll get to that later, right? We'll get to that later.
On Pesach,
right, but you can eat like cooked, you know, in the pot. You know, it's fine. You know,
they eat like steaks in the oven, you know.
Really? Oh, get me hungry now. I'm sorry. Oh, oh wow. Okay, so.
But it's like you don't want to look like a Korban Pesach.
I got you. Right. So there is a custom like this. They don't eat like that. Okay, so whatever. But for sure, barbecue you're not allowed to do. Right? That's for sure. Yeah. So as we said. Right, that also is affected by chatzot, midnight. There's also other halachot which are affected by midnight, right? Sure. Which is what? As we said, this Kriyat Shema you have to say right before midnight. Right, Tikkun chatzot, you know, you can say later. That's no problem. Yeah. It's just the opposite, right? They say later usually. They say after midnight.
Right. But it's okay.
Right.
You can say it before.
Right. That's true. Right. So there's a lot of things that are affected also by midnight as well. Right, all these things, and there's even more things. But so as we said, right, that this is the way halachic hours function. that everything is done by halachic hours, with almost no exceptions. Also, want to get to the issue of the last time of mincha and last time of arbit. How do we calculate this, right? So the truth is that the Gemara says that arbit can be done all night. What does that mean? Until the dawn, you can do arbit.
You know
what I mean? Yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
Until the Shah.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
It's in the Gemara.
Sure. There's, by the way, according to Kabbalah, there's a reason for that.
Okay.
According to Zohar Kadosh, the truth is, right, that it says like this, the language of Gemara is like this, right? Tfilat David en lo keva, has no fixed time. What does that mean? You could say it all night.
Right.
But that language doesn't have keva, doesn't have a fixed time. According to the Kabbalah, there's a deep reason for that. What does that mean? The Zohar Kadosh says that the Arvit prayer is very hard to get accepted.
Because of all the deen.
Right, because the Chitzonim are Shultim. They're ruling over that time. You understand? The bad powers are ruling.
Even now, like at this hour.
Yeah, sure, all night. Yeah, but especially in the first part of the night, it's even worse, right? So the thing is like this, right? That we want to get our prayers accepted. So therefore, it says Zohar Kadosh. This is the reason why the Gemara says, right? The Gaon of Vilna, you know what he said, right? He said that you can't really understand the Gemara until you learn the Zohar. This is a good example. I'll give you a good example right now. This is a good example, right? When you learn the Zohar, then you really understand the Gemara. So the Gemara says, "En lo keva." There's no fixed time for Arvi, right? Comes Zohar Kadosh and says, "What does that mean? There's no fixed time? What? Because every day is something else? Well, what is that business, right?" So he says, "Yes, that's the truth. You know why? Because since the chitzonim, the bad powers, are trying to block the prayers at that time, it doesn't go up so easily. So what we do is like this, right? That we surprise them and say it at a different time all the time. There's no fixed time. Every day it's a different time. So this it's like a surprise attack.
Right.
They weren't expecting it. So they're not ready to block it. You understand? This is the reason why, according to the Zohar Kadosh, the Tfilat Arvit, right, can be done anytime. What does that mean? It's even better like that, right? It shouldn't have a fixed time.
Do it randomly.
9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, every day something else. Yeah. And by the way, for us it's good. You know why? Because the ones that we pray over here, right, in a lot of shuls, we pray around, after it gets dark.
Right, that's the worst time, though.
Because every day it's changing the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like it's shifting all the time. So it's actually something good.
But according to what you just said, I mean, isn't it the most tough time at the beginning? Why don't you pray it after Chatzot? You're better off. Chesed. You have more.
You know why? Because no, we don't want that because you're going to fall asleep. We're afraid you're going to fall asleep. You know what I mean? So we don't want to pray early because most people are not, on this level to talk about Kabbalah. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're worried about they're going to eat dinner and fall down on the chair, somewhere. Wake up in the morning. You know what I mean? That's what we're worried about. We're the average Joe. You know what I'm saying? The average Joe. So these people are. We're not going to talk about Kabbalah now with these people.
Right, sure.
You know what I mean?
No, you're right.
Just make sure you say it early as possible. You know why? Because get it out of the way exactly, so you can go eat dinner. Because you're not allowed to have dinner without saying, Kriyat Shema.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're not allowed to also, you cannot eat dinner without saying Arvit. You know what I mean? So because of that, all these things, right? We don't want to have this on our heads, these issues, right? So we want to say everything early, get it over with, and then later on, the ones who are more pious people, they can do all those things later on, at the proper time, right? The interesting thing is that we also, right, we Sfaradim, there's one big difference between us and Ashkenazim, right? When it comes to our customs of Arvit, that they don't pray nowadays anyway, right? In the old days, it wasn't like this. It was just the opposite, right? That actually it says, right, in the Tosfot and Rosh, brought down that the Ashkenazim used to pray in Europe. They used to pray Arvit very early. We're talking about it was still daytime. You know what they say? It was like 2-3 hours before the night. They used to pray Arvit. Can you imagine? Total daytime.
How?
Why did they do that? That's his custom. You know why? Because in those days, there was a lot of problems over there in Europe. People were being attacked when they went to the shul. There was danger.
At night.
At dark, you couldn't go out. It was dangerous out there. You know what I'm saying? All kinds of anti-Semites, all kinds of pogroms, all kinds of nonsense going on there. You understand? So because of that, they wanted to do everything in the daytime and get home. Don't be in the street at that time. Don't be in the field. So therefore, what they used to do was like this, right? They used to pray early. And this is like, it sounds ridiculous, 2-3 hours before the night. But they had no choice, as if, you know what I mean? They had, so what does that mean? This is like similar to what we said about Rashi, right? And the Ravan and the Ravan. They say, right, you can also do Shachrit before the dawn, right? That seems too early, right? It seems ridiculous. But there is some qualities over there already of Chesed, right? So same thing over here, you see? When you pray Arvit 2-3 hours before the night, like they used to do the Ashkenazim in Europe, it's a very similar concept. Why? because there's also a lot of dinim at that time as well. After Chatzot, the dinim come in, So it resembles the night a little bit. You understand? That quality of night is a little bit there. So therefore, it's a little bit. It's also, as we said, we call it Erev already. We call it Erev, right? Once the Chatzot decline, so it's a little bit of an Erev there. But the truth is, right, the halacha is not like that. To be honest with you, this custom was something unique to Europe.
Yeah,
nobody does it today. Not the Ashkenazim, not the Sfaradim. Nobody does this today. You know what I mean? So what they do is like this, right? That the Ashkenazim are now even more machmir, right? In Eretz Israel, most of the Ashkenazim, 99%, they don't pray Arvit until it's Tzita Kochavim, until the stars come out, right? 20 minutes after the sun goes down. They don't pray Arvit. Can you imagine? Just the opposite extreme. Before they were doing, right? Why they do that, by the way, nowadays? Because the Gra said, like Al-Mivina said, right? The person should wait till Tzita Kochavim. The stars come out. So they do like the Gra, they do like the Al-Mivina. Even though really, according to Halacha, a person can say Arvit after the sun goes down. After Shkia. That's what we do in many places, right? In America. We do that. Ashkenazim also do that in many places. But the truth is, right, that according to the Sephardi custom, right, in the summer when the days are very long and people have to daven Arvit a little bit earlier because otherwise they can't pray 10, 11 o'clock. It's already too late for them. They're studying Torah. They have all kinds of things. They go at home already. They're home. They don't want to go back to the shul. They don't want to go back to the yeshiva anymore. Right. Whatever. So what they do is that the Sephardim have a custom. They after Plaga Mincha, they already say Arvit. What does that mean? An hour and a quarter before it gets dark. So what does that mean? An hour before Shkia, an hour before the sun goes down. So if the sun goes down, let's say 8:30, right? Sephardim can already do. According to our custom, it says brought down Bet Yosef, brought down Ravadi also. The Rabbi says Abba Shalom, Moreno Rabbeinu, he himself used to do that. He used to go to Musayov, Musayov is the famous yeshiva shul in Jerusalem, right? Right. This is a very important place, by the way. A lot of important things going on there. Okay. A lot of lectures going on there, right? But it's like it's a big like shop. It's a big factory. Okay. It's a big mini factory over there. You know what I mean? This place is like amazing. You got to go there once. You've been there? You got to go there. It's something amazing. You got to see this place. There's like so many minyanim going on there. There's like 20 minyanim going on there. It's like amazing. So what happens like this, right? That the rabbi used to go to Musayov when he was young. He used to pray Arvit early, at Plaga Mincha, and that's the way he did it. Why is that? Because he didn't, he didn't fit into his learning schedule. So he used to do that also. He brings it down in Yev Yomer, his book Yev Yomer. He brings it down over there. They used to pray early Plaga Mincha. What does that mean? 1 hour before Shkia, before the sun goes down. So what does that mean? That would be like 7:30. Can you imagine in the summer? 8:30 it's dark. The sun goes down, and we're praying Arvit at 7:30. That's what the rabbi used to do. And I used to do it also by myself as well. When I saw the rabbis did it, I also did it. We had a custom like this in yeshiva, in Yechavadat, that we used to have a minyan like that in the summer because there were people who couldn't pray later on. So they exactly. So they also had night call-outs. So they had to learn at night. They continue, right? So there was no time to pray, So they had to do the minyan earlier. That's what they used to do. You understand? They didn't fit into the schedule. So the person who has a situation like that, right? We Sfaradim were lenient. They brought down a bit Yosef. Our custom is to pray after Plaga Mincha, right? So what does that mean? That as we said, right? That 1 hour before the sun goes down, we already pray Arvit in the summer. In the winter we don't do because we don't need it. You understand? Technically speaking, we can do it. But we don't need it, so we don't do it. I see that you're okay, whatever. So we're going to stop here. Chazak u'baruch. God bless. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. God bless you.
And we'll see you next week, B'ezrat Hashem. B'atzlacha.
Thank you. I'm destroyed.